One of the things that I also really stress is that you are the CEO of you. And even as a college student, you are running a business of you.
Hello, and welcome back to Level Up with Lily, where we are getting 1% better every day by leveling up our health, wealth, and minds. I'm your host, Lily, and I am back with another guest episode. Today, we are speaking with Christina Kish. Christina is one of the co-founders of Netflix, the founder of the pole and aerial dance company Poletential, and now the founder of Curveball Ventures, where she provides business mentoring and motivational speaking based on her decades of experience. In this episode, Christina shares the fascinating origin story of Netflix. We also dive into how to discover what you are truly good at and how to harness that, whether that be in business or in your personal life. I had a great time chatting with Christina, and I'm sure you will take a lot from this episode. Please remember to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast wherever you are listening, and follow along on social media for all updates. Thank you, Christina, for being on the podcast. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, the first thing I ask everyone when they come on the show is, what is one thing you're doing to level up right now?
So right now, given that it's the beginning of the year, we all have kind of that fresh start. And so I always look at my week as being, I want to do something new that I've never done before. And it could be something very simple. And I also want to make sure everything that is on my list, that I push it forward an inch, one step forward. And so I keep things really simple. I don't like complications. And so that is literally what I think about when I wake up in the morning is, what can I push forward an inch, and what's something new I've never done before that I'll do today?
What are some examples of new things you've been doing?
So new things, I love new restaurants.
Okay.
And I love new places to hike. And I love new music. And so this week, I'm, for example, going to a concert in Vegas for my beloved The Killers, but I'm also going to see cool. Pitbull, because I've never seen Pitbull before. And so, that's my level up, is like, try something you haven't done before. And so that's my this week new thing I'm doing.
I love that. Level up with Pitbull.
Exactly.
That's going to be a fun show.
It is. I plan to dance the entire time.
As you should. As you should. So I was really fascinated when we first connected to hear your story. So would you be able to share that with the audience? You can take that back as far as you'd like through Netflix and into all of your further ventures from there.
I'd love to. And thank you again for having me to share my story. And I hope that, people find it interesting. I guess the less interesting is just kind of my background. I'm a California girl, born in San Diego, went to high school and college in San Luis Obispo, and then started my career in the tech world in the Bay Area of California. And I had been a kid who loved sports, who loved being on student council. And so that just kind of drove me into all the thines that I did in high school with sports and different committees and things like that. So when it came time to choose a college, I went to Cal Poly because I wanted to be a business major. I studied information systems. I'm not a great programmer at all, but it helped me to learn kind of procedures and how to get projects done and off the ground. So when I graduated, I went to the Bay Area and I worked for software companies, and it was all consumer software. And this is back in the day when you had to put the discs in a box and put the box on a shelf, and people would go to the store and buy the software to put on their computer. So this is a long time ago.
I can't even fathom that now.
I know you can't. But that is how it worked. And so I worked for a company called Software Publishing Corporation, and they were a company that made software for Apple II, the Mac, and then when PCs obviously got out there into the marketplace. And I was with them for a long time doing tech support and did some other product marketing for them. And I then kind of left there to work for Intuit, and they're the most well known for Quicken and QuickBooks. And again, doing more product management, marketing types of roles. And I just really loved the way the software companies worked back then were much like consumer packaged good companies. So if you were in charge of a product, you had basic P&L responsibility. And so I really kind of honed my business skills in learning from people who had been in consumer packaged goods, but doing it for software, which so it kind of married.
That's an interesting two industries to marry, but I can see the crossover there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I really kind of, grew up learning it that way. And from there, I really wanted to be in a startup. And I had all these great skills about kind of building products, getting them onto a shelf. At the time, it was on a shelf. But I really wanted to be in a smaller, I'd been with those companies when they were small and then they grew large. So I started what I called startup hopping. And I went to some real duds, like really not good ones.
What was the worst one? Or you don't have to say the name of it, but what were they doing?
So I was at a company for about a weekend where I actually had to walk out because the owner, CEO of the company was a little mad in the head and was very demanding. And what I found in Silicon Valley is there's a lot of big personalities. And sometimes they weren't the kinds of personalities I wanted to work with. And so when I say I was at some bad startups, it was mostly because they were driven by people who thought they were bigger than the company itself. And
that totally matters.
It really does. And so when I say I had some duds, the products were, could they have all been successful? Maybe. But the team is so important. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of look back on my experience doing sports, and team is just so important. And so I really, as I go from one startup to the next, that was kind of my litmus test on whether or not I was going to be a good fit and contribute, is whether or not I thought it really had the right team.
That team aspect is so important. And not just that everyone can get along and everyone functions well, but it's that everyone has their role and that there isn't one person trying to do it all, because of course that's important. You need someone running the business, running the company, but everyone on the team has their roles too. And if you aren't able to find that balance somewhere, there can feel like then something's off.
It really can. And also what's important in a team environment is that the mission is very clearly defined, and every person on the team understands it. And they don't walk away from the conference room thinking it's something different. And that is a discipline that is very, very hard when you've got a lot of different personalities and different backgrounds and people who have different expertise. And so that, as a team leader, is one of the most important things that you do. So whether you're an individual team leader or you're a CEO or, whatever you are on a team, a coach, you need to make sure that all the players know what their role is for that final mission.
Very true. So in your startup hopping, at what point do you find where you land?
Well, so this is the story, and it's actually somewhat comical. So I was doing these startups, and I went to a startup that did scanners. And so it was a hardware company, which I hadn't worked at before. And so I was with this company, and they did hardware and software. And I was in the marketing department, and we didn't have a vice president of marketing. So they asked us all to interview potential candidates. So I was basically interviewing for my boss. And so a guy came in, and I interviewed him. I liked him. We hit it off. His name was Mark Randolph. And he came to work for the company, and we did great things. But the company was failing. And so he went his way, I went my way. I went back to startup hopping, basically, and went to some other little companies. And I got a phone call one day from Mark, and he said, Christina, stop going to startups. He said, I just landed a role at a large software company. And it was a software company that made software for product developers. He goes, I'm in corporate marketing, which is kind of, for those of you who don't know the difference between product marketing and corporate marketing. If you're a product marketer, corporate marketing seems like a walk in the park. And so I went to work for him at this company, and it's like fancy offices and kind of, it was going to be nice for a while to get away from like that craziness of a startup.
Yeah, the startup culture, I mean, it's not for everyone. It's fun, but it is a lot of hustle and it's a lot of uncertainty. So moving into a corporate role does feel somewhat cushy after that.
It does. And that lasted for 5 days. So I got there on a Monday, started working for Mark. And on the next Sunday, I got a phone call from him. And he says, well, the company got sold. I said, oh, great. Do we have jobs? He says, well, no. But because a competitor was purchasing the company, they needed to go through Department of Justice. So we have 6 months to kind of do nothing. And I'm like, I'll take my salary for 6 months. Okay, like that's cool. So we had to go to work every day and not really do anything because we couldn't market a corporation that was being sold. And so one day, the owner of the company that was being sold, his name is Reed Hastings, walked by my office and he said, Christina, come on into Mark's office. I said, okay. So I go in there and Reed says to Mark and I, I'm going to be your angel. I'm going to give you $2 million. Tell me what you're going to do with it. Tell me what company you're going to start.
Wow.
And so Mark and I looked at him and figured we didn't have anything better to do at the time. And so we started kind of exploring, what would you do? What company would you start? And at that point in time in history, Amazon was new. And so to give some context, we're talking like 1997-ish kind of thing. And so we're like, okay, this is going to be an internet play. It's going to be e-commerce. It's got to be something that grows big. So why do it if it's not big? It's probably going to be something where there's a paradigm shift where people who maybe they're doing it in real life now, like out in brick and mortar world, but they're going to do it on the internet instead. And so we just started researching like what were big markets. And at the time, what was being done mostly by people on the internet was banking, entertainment, shopping, and pornography, actually. So I wasn't going to be in that business. And banking I didn't have any kind of, that wasn't going to be sexy and fun, right? And so we started looking at entertainment and we really wanted to know like what are the big players out there? And the cable companies had started doing on demand. We started looking at, well, how do people consume entertainment? We had in our heads, like eventually you'd press a button and things would be streamed, but it seemed very far away. And one of the largest players out there was Blockbuster. And so digging into the financials of Blockbuster, it was kind of like, how do they make money? And they had been through a lot of financial hardships and people were like giving them money off and on to keep the company going. And they had the franchisees versus their own stores. So they had a lot going on. And in this research, we found out that the format was going to change. So there is no longer going to be a VHS tape. More than likely, Hollywood and the rental market was going to switch to a DVD. And what would need to happen then is all the brick and mortar stores were going to have to swap out all their inventory. The hardware manufacturers were going to stop creating VCRs and create DVD players. All of that had to get through the distribution channel and into the marketplace. And so we kind of sat there and thought, if that change is going to be made, what if the internet played a role in that change? And so we started kind of brainstorming on how you could ship a disc. So with that format change, it kind of made the opportunity for doing mail order rental something that maybe could work. Did we know it was going to work? No, but we thought it might be an interesting idea. And that's how Netflix started. So as soon as we were released from that company, we set up offices. We were in like the conference room of a hotel one time. We finally got an office. There were 5 founding members of the team that came in. We got engineers, we got, marketing people. And that's how we started the company. And Reed gave us the money and we kind of just started building this thing. And it's not glamorous at all. The fun thing is that the people who started the company, we had all kind of come from places that had been small at one point in time. So we weren't without some knowledge of what it was going to take to build the company. So we knew it was going to be hard work. And so that was kind of fun because we talked about teams before, right? So when we all came to the table, nobody had rose-colored glasses on that this was just going to be like, super easy and fun and, that kind of thing, party all the time. Everybody that came to the table knew we were signing up to do something hard and there was going to be like challenges. So
it's hard, but
yeah.
You have this idea of, okay, this is going to be difficult for a season and probably for a while still as we're building this, but you see the vision.
Right.
And you see what you could build. And it sounds like you were just in the perfect time in the world to found this company.
That's a lot about new ideas and new companies. It is really about the environment and and I talk a lot about this when I go out and give these kinds of talks, right? Is I talk a lot about problem solving. And all business or starting companies is finding a really great, elegant solution to a problem. And so what we tackled was there was going to be this great thing called the internet, and there was going to be this format change. And so there is going to be some paradigm shift in how you did things. So what if we solved a little bit of the problem of this paradigm shift of being able to give access to people for DVDs that maybe the brick and mortar stores weren't going to be able to do in a more elegant fashion? And of course, elegance meant figuring out an envelope, figuring out a website, working with the studios to take us on as a rental company. But really, that is what building a company is that you're finding an elegant solution to a problem that hopefully a lot of people will have, and they adopt the solution.
That's a brilliant idea to focus on if you are someone who's looking to build a business. So what moment in this story do you realize, okay, this company that we're building, this is big. It's getting big. Did you know it since the beginning? Did you have full faith and belief in it? Because I'm sure as a founder, you want to look back and say, yeah, I had full faith since the beginning, but you also never know.
You don't know. And so you are putting some risk, on the line. My role in the company, besides being a VP and on the founding team, so helping in hiring decisions, naming the company, all the kind of technical pieces of it, my specific role in the team was I was in charge of when you as a consumer came to the website, we called it the store. So when you came to the store, I was responsible for your experience, what you saw, how the content was provided for you. So acquisition and retention was what I was responsible for. So that meant I needed engineers to build the UI on my team. And then there was an engineering VP who had the back end. And I also needed just regular marketing people that knew how to run like different promotion and really how to make that such an appealing experience for the customer. And so I was so focused on that and knowing we could do it. That's what gave me hope that this was going to be a good thing. And as I said, we knew eventually someday streaming would happen. And so to capture the user at that moment and get them wedded to your interface, you knew if you did it really well, you'd keep them. And so that really was the focus in the very beginning is we've got to do this really well. Now, speed is important. So you have to forego a lot of niceties, the things you really want to put in there. And so when you sign up to do something like this, it's not going to be a 6-month endeavor. It's going to be, a continuous endeavor to keep improving what you've built because you face so many problems. Are you always confident? No. Do you think tomorrow disaster will strike? Probably. Do you have silly things that happen? Yeah, we got to work one day and the place was robbed and the servers were, all stolen. The day we launched, we didn't have enough servers. So we had to send people out to, it was called Fry's Electronics at the time, to go buy servers because we didn't have the bandwidth. So there's all kinds of weird things that happen.
It's crazy to think about that now.
Yeah.
Reflecting back.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But us streaming in the 21st century,
right.
We don't
right.
In 2025, we don't think about Netflix almost 30 years ago.
Right. Exactly.
We just go and we click on our TV and we're like, yeah, what do I want to watch?
Exactly. So at the time, was there hesitancy? Of course. Was there doubt? Of course. Was there a conviction that we were getting customers? Absolutely. Did we know DVD was going to take off? We were pretty confident that DVD was going to take off. We were able to get the deals with the hardware manufacturers so that when you bought a DVD player, there was a coupon in the box that said Netflix on it, which was huge. So we had all that. Was there going to be competition? Of course, there was going to be competition. The biggest thing that you face is your own company. And so do we have enough money? Do we have the right people? So those were where the doubts come in. And one of the things that happens in startup culture is that when you start a company, you want people like me. You want a generalist that knows a little about a lot. And so you can hire me and I can take a blank sheet of paper and build something, right? Now, can I keep it going? And am I a specialist in certain areas? Absolutely not. And so about year 2, as money's starting to be depleted, as bigger things are needed, you have to go get specialists. You need specialists in distribution. You need specialists in finance. You need specialists in the engineering team, specialist in marketing. So that was kind of the switch over that happens from a founding team. And that did happen at Netflix, rightly so. And so when I stepped away, it was because my job.
This was when?
So this would have been 2000. My stepping away was because they didn't need me as a generalist. They needed 4 of specialists in my role to keep everything going. And so coincidentally at the same time is when Reed, who is our angel, he came in and became the CEO of the company. And he started kind of putting his team in place. And they really are who you need to credit for the streaming app that became Netflix, because they took what we built. The distribution went crazy, them being able to get DVDs out throughout the country. They really need a seasoned team to go do that. And they did. And then all of the content and all of the engineering that is underneath what you see today all had to happen as well. And so it was that kind of next team that was able to take what we built and move it to that next level. And so people out there, and I talk about this a lot too, is that startup mentality is very different from the next the next team or the next team after that or the next team after that. And some people stay for the whole generation, through the generations, and some people don't. I didn't because I'm a generalist. I didn't want just a little teeny tiny job. I want to go help people who are trying to start things.
Yeah. And this entire story is just so fascinating. And I think the one thing I'll say about the generalist versus specialist is you say that you can credit the specialist with building Netflix to what it is today. And yes, of course, that's true. They were the ones who then turned it to streaming. But would they have been able to get it off the ground, just these specialists who know their one lane, they know their one job? Maybe not. You need the generalists to take $2 million and no idea and turn it into a company that ultimately is going to become the largest streaming service.
I think so. I think that there's a place for both kinds of people. I think that the trick is to know what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I very much know I'm a generalist, and I'm willing to admit to that and say that's the kind of worker that I am and the kind of contributor that I am.
Yeah, you need to know yourself and know your strengths.
Exactly.
And that goes back to the team too. Everyone on the team needs to know what they're good at in order to thrive and have a thriving company. So after you step away from Netflix, you take kind of a large pivot. Can we talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So when I left Netflix, it was Netflix actually went public within a year after I left. And so the only kind of personal thing that I wish I could have stayed for that, but that's okay because that really, it still happened. What I needed to do next was be a founder. And so I really kind of searched on, well, what was I trying to prove to myself? And what I was trying to prove was I could take a problem and solve it, and I could build a brand. Everything I had done up to that point, I was learning how to build a brand from a lot of other people, including Mark, who's one of the best at it. I wanted to see, does Christina Kish have the ability to build a brand? And so to find the problem to solve, I wasn't working and I was needing to be a little athletic. So I was going around trying to find a workout that I liked, which proved to be a little difficult. But I did like Pilates, and I did all kinds of things. And while I was teaching Pilates, because of course I can't just go do something, then I have to learn how to teach it and all that good stuff.
I get that. It's why can't you just have a hobby and not turn it into your entire personality or your work or something? I fall victim to that often too.
That's really not a good thing sometimes. But so I had heard about this group of women who had gone to a pole dancing class. I'm like, well, what's that? And was it fun? And so I got a group of people from the Pilates studio to go to a class, and it was so much fun. You got to dance, you got to have music, and also it really tested your strength. And we had to drive to San Francisco from Redwood City. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, there's nothing in Redwood City. So I was like, well, why can't this be a business here? So the problem that I looked at is first of all, I want to do this and I don't want to drive in the city every day.
Yeah. Sometimes your customer is you.
Is you, right? Yeah. That's actually the best customer, right? It's something you would pay money for, right?
Yeah. And if then you're looking for something that's going to motivate you and inspire you, if it's a problem that you have that you're trying to solve, then you're going to be more motivated to build this company.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the women who was at the Pilates studio, she was looking for something to do too. So we became business partners, and we built a studio in Redwood City in 2006. And I had that studio for 11 years. And that space is still used as a pole and aerial studio. It has a different name now, but I'm really proud of what we built because it checked all the boxes of the problem solving, community building, branding. It was one of the largest brands in the country and internationally. It helped people. Like people really loved it. And it really kind of helped me understand what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I should say maybe not understand, but solidify the things that, listen, these are the things I need to go hire other people to do because maybe I just don't like it, or maybe I'm just not good at it. And so having my own company was always on my list of things to do. And so that it fulfilled that need for me as well.
That's great. And I do love the premise of the company as well. I've never tried pole dancing myself. I have many friends who have, and they do say that, yes, it is very hard, which I don't discount. I think that it requires a lot of strength to also do that and be like flowy and move gracefully, which I'm not a graceful person at all, which is why I lift weights. But also it's so empowering as well.
I really feel that way. I feel like dance, movement expression, whether you're doing it with an apparatus, and I grew the studio. It was actually a very large studio that also had all the circus arts. So it had silks and hammocks and trapeze and lyra and everything, plus pole. So I think that any time you're able to have movement be part of your repertoire, whether it's dancing in your kitchen or even runners, movement is so important for your own expression. And so now when I talk to people about movement, I really talk to them about the best way to know about yourself is to kind of tap into how you move. So I really do feel like that was what I was able to bring to a lot of people.
That's cool. I want to speak on that a little bit. That finding the movement that works for you is so important because, as I said, I lift weights, and that's something that I found works well for me and feels good for me. And I wake up every morning excited, usually to go to the gym. But some people hate the gym. They don't want to step foot in there, and it's not for them. You said when you were kind of deciding what movement felt right for you initially, you landed on Pilates and then moved into this. And that's just such a personal choice too. It's the same as like knowing yourself, knowing what works for you.
Right. And I wasn't a dancer. I was an athlete. I was a fast pitch softball pitcher. I mean, I was as like hardcore, like kind of that kind of athlete as you can get. So I didn't have like dance training, but I would say, 90% of my clients didn't either. It's movement. And, you can move in yoga, or you can move. There's just so many places you can get your body moving. And at this point in life, and what I talk to people about when they're kind of like doing we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, the work-life balance, whatever you do, make sure you move.
Yes. I was just talking to another guest actually about this idea that the most successful people I know participate in movement of some kind. Maybe they go on a run every morning, or maybe they lift weights, or they do something like Pilates, etc. I feel like taking care of yourself and having dedicated time for that specifically can make you just all that much better in your personal life, in your professional life, like with your family, with your coworkers, out in the world. If you don't show up for yourself first, you can't show up for others. So you alluded to this just a moment ago, but do you want to move into talking about what you're doing now with Curveball Ventures?
Yeah, so I went through a little transition period going from, I was in California, I moved to Texas in 2019, and that coincided with Mark Randolph releasing his memoir, and it's called That Will Never Work. And at the same time, a documentary was made about the founding of Netflix and the battle with Blockbuster. And that can be found on Prime Video. And it's called The Epic Battle for America's Eyeballs.
Funny, it's not on Netflix, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, yeah. And so with that in 2019, I decided to start kind of voicing what I had done and my participation in the co-founding of Netflix. And again, Mark's book kind of tells my story, so I don't have to write one, which is great. And so what I decided to do was make myself available for public speaking. And what that kind of turned into is my being able to talk to people who are kind of looking for people outside of their either school, if they're in college or high school, or their workplace, talking to people who've had a career and have had startup life and have an entrepreneurial spirit. So I kind of validated what I'm doing by calling it Curveball Ventures. And I use a lot of sports references because I think that's a common language that people have. We've already talked about teams, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a common language that you can really kind of get everybody talking about the same thing. And so I talk about curveballs, and I talk about like, how do you see them coming? What to do if you didn't see it coming? How to set yourself up for your career? How to make decision making, the best way to set yourself up for good decision making, or if bad decisions are made, how you bounce back from them. And so I just kind of started putting myself out there, and it organically started happening where a podcaster will ask me on, I'll be interviewed for something. I'll go and talk to a group of people. And from that, more recently, I've been working with my alma mater, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and working with their career group as well as their entrepreneur group, and doing public speaking to them, and then also offering coffee chats to the students. And so I do these coffee chats. I give them an hour of chat and just let them open up, and whether they're freshmen or I have some postgrads. And so it's been a really great experience in the last 12 months to be able to talk to people who are either thinking about their future. And then I also have people who are out of school in maybe their first jobs and really kind of trying to navigate that career path, because we're in a world where there's so many words thrown at you and you're just kind of inundated by words that actually mean nothing. So I always use the example of, if you're in a room with 20 people and you ask them what the word marketing means, you're going to get 20 different answers. Mm-hmm. And so I think people of that age, whether it's coming out of high school, in college, or just out of college, they just get all these words thrown at them. And so I love to talk with them about, well, what's reality? And just taking it down to the simplest of terms so that you can navigate your life and your career. And so that's kind of what I've been doing since 2019.
That's very cool. I mean, you're speaking to an audience of that exact demographic. I started this podcast when I was still in college. Mm-hmm. And really, that was one of the reasons that I started it. I wanted to just, honestly, selfishly, wanted to speak to people who are really excelling and leveling up as I saw in their lives. And I was in this in-between place of about to enter the quote unquote real world and mm-hmm. the big scary world and workforce and be the little fish again. Right. And I wanted to hear from people about how they navigated that and how they found their footing, because that's at an age where, especially when you're still going through school and you're just getting out, you're figuring out what it is you're good at, what it is you're not good at, where you see yourself, what values you have and what environments work best for you. And that's still something that a lot of us are figuring out. So it's great to have mentors that are in your corner, and especially someone like you, open to just taking a coffee chat or something. I'm grateful for all of those people along my journey who have been that sounding board for me.
And seek those people out, because mm-hmm. they'll say yes. Mm-hmm. And I also I'm a connector. And so if I talk with somebody, I'm like, oh, I know somebody that would be better at this topic than I am for you. One of the things that I also really stress is that you are the CEO of you. And even as a college student, you were running a business of you. So you had to figure out how to pay your bills. You had to figure out where's the income, where's the expenses, and you had to budget time. You had to budget, with the goal. Again, we go back to that, know the mission, right? Of graduating, of getting a job, going out into the world, or going to postgrad, whatever you're going to do, whatever that mission was. So I really like to talk to people about and try to empower them. Like, you are already a CEO. You don't need to be named a CEO. You are already the CEO. And so I spend a lot of time on that. And sometimes people just need a reminder of that.
I love that you're the CEO of your life.
You are.
What's something that you hear from a lot of these young people that they're struggling with? And what advice do you often find yourself giving?
The biggest theme is I'm not sure what direction to go. I'm not sure what path to take. And I always distill it down for them as they're letting a lot of noise kind of get in the way. And I did one of these yesterday where she is a freshman at Berkeley. And she thinks she needs to know the answer right now. I'm like, actually, you don't. And so really kind of going back to what is the problem? Like, let's define the problem here. What's the next decision that needs to be made? So I start there. Then I go with find out what you're really good at. Find out what your contribution is. And then when that next decision needs to be made, you're going to rely on that. So it's really kind of taking things at a little smaller chunks. I'm finding that a lot of the students that I talk with are like, they're trying to take it in too big of chunks. Like, not just the internship you're going to have this summer, but I want to know what my internship is next summer too. It's like, no, let's take it into little smaller chunks here. What decision do we have to make today?
Yeah, you're worried, like, what if what I do this summer affects next summer, which affects my career?
Exactly.
But I would say the same thing to my freshman self. Like, I also was always planning and always future thinking.
Right.
It's taking a pause and saying, okay, we're here now. What can we do in these circumstances? And then we'll tackle that next thing when I get there.
Right.
You want to always be setting yourself up for success later on, but you don't have to worry about the future so much that you're paralyzed to even take a step forward.
And no internship, for example, is a bad decision.
Yeah, no decision is a bad decision.
No decision is a bad decision.
The only bad decision is not deciding.
Yeah.
Because then you're just stuck.
I think that's a common theme that I get a lot. And then with my entrepreneurs who they have this great business idea, they also are like way up here. And so I'm like, we don't have to decide that yet. What do we need to decide right now? So it happens in both scenarios, whether a business they're trying to start or their own college, kind of navigating college career.
Have you learned anything from your most recent career venture with public speaking and with kind of career counseling in a way? Has that taught you anything about yourself, or have you noticed things from your past that you now see other people experiencing and you wish you could go back, give advice to previous self, anything like that?
Yeah. So what I have learned is that you can rely on your confidence. That confidence isn't a bad thing. And I think I'm starting to learn that more after every kind of public speaking event that I have, or the one-on-one work, that it really is that knowing yourself and being confident in what you're saying and the questions that you ask and what you're saying you don't know, that confidence is a good thing. Because I know if I was talking to my earlier self, there was always times where I wanted to tap that down because it maybe wasn't always viewed as being positive, that I was confident. And so when I'm speaking now to people, I'm like, no, let raise that confidence. Like, if you've got it, you can be it. Like, go ahead and be confident. That's not a bad thing.
That challenge with confidence, do you notice that there are like barriers to displaying that confidence that you've experienced with people that you've coached or worked with?
So just like some people are better at showing confidence, what could come off as being super confident. So if you want to go male, female, a very confident male, he may be doing that because there's things he's not confident about. Women do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people in general, confidence is kind of a weird thing. You could be showing confidence when in fact you're not feeling it, or you could be not showing it at all because you don't feel it. I think both problems are problems. So it's about how to learn kind of navigating your own self in how you show your confidence and how you show, like, listen, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm guessing here. Or maybe you could help me out with something. And I do see it with both genders. I see it with all ages. I see it across the board. And I know you wanted to talk about, like, what was it like back in the 80s and 90s being a woman in tech? It's just so funny to me because I get this question a lot about what was it like being a woman in the late 80s, early 90s in tech. And I have to just say that, like, I don't know if it's because I was young or what it was, but I just didn't bring it to the table. Like, I just was so focused. I think also being an athlete, you kind of don't really kind of think in those terms because you just figure, like, I'm a player on the team. And so when I coach now, I just basically tell men and women, it's like, you're a player on the team. Figure out what your role is. Figure out what you're good at. Figure out what you need help with. And don't put like biases. Don't bring it to the table and it won't be there.
Yeah, true. If you as a woman already say that you are going to be looked at as less than in a business setting, then that's kind of what you're going to perpetuate.
And I'm going to be really frank. There are jerks everywhere. There are jerks in Silicon Valley. I'm going to tell you right now, I've worked for some of them. Like, there's jerks and they come in all shapes, sizes, genders. I mean, and you know, that's just something you need to learn is like, there's going to be people you don't get along with. There's going to be people that just aren't your cup of tea, that they're not important. What's important is you and what you're bringing to the table. Know what you're good at.
Exactly. It keeps coming back to that.
It does.
Know thyself is kind of the root of the entire conversation. Kind of jumping into a different topic, because you've talked about your experience of being a founder and being very successful in a business sense, now moving into working with others. How do you have time to take care of yourself? And how have you found balance between work and rest?
Yeah, I'll be quite honest with you that I didn't always find balance. I wasn't always very good at it. And it's taken me a while to figure out why. And the realization that I came to is that if you're good at something, your ego gets fed by it. And so if you're good in a workplace environment, then you want to continue being in a workplace environment. You don't want to go home. You don't want to, go do something else. And so I think that now when I look at going forward and I look at my past, I realize that satisfaction that I get in the workplace, I need to look for and get in other places that aren't the workplace. And so if I could go back to my younger self, I'd probably remind myself that the workplace isn't the only place your ego is going to get fed. It could get fed in other ways. And I think the best advice that I have for others and trying to find that is to look at the people around you and look at people who you admire and how do they do it. And it could be that they do it outside of work with outside athletics. They could do it with church. They could do it with a volunteer group. They could do it with their families. look at how they get their ego fed in those ways. And when I say ego, that's not a bad word. And I'm not saying that they're looking for kudos or awards or anything like that. But when you're in a workplace and some people get really like, let's go, this is great. I'm feeling so good about myself because I'm making things happen. You want to try to find that in other places as well. I didn't do a great job of that. I love work. I want to go back to work because I'm good at that. So why wouldn't I want to keep doing what I'm good at? Right?
But now you found it in a sense of helping others.
Exactly.
One of the last questions that I always ask all my guests is, what is something that you're doing to slow down right now? So how is it that you are able to step away from that work? And even your coaching and mentorship, that's still work. What do you do when you step away?
Yeah. So because I told you in the beginning, I always want to make sure something new is on either my calendar or on my mind. That is actually how I'm slowing down, because I want to make sure that some of those new things are not necessarily needing me to go at 100 miles an hour. So maybe those new things are drawing art. Maybe it's more on a spiritual realm with my church or Bible, that kind of thing. I have a little cat that I love so much, and maybe it's okay for he and I just to chill out for an hour, kind of thing. So I'm trying to look at what can I do new that is not at 100 miles an hour, doesn't boast a social media post, right? It's like, I can do this and not post about it, kind of thing. And so I think
that's a challenge in this generation.
It is, right? And so those are, I can, stare at my backyard and kind of think through like what I'm going to plant, kind of thing, which is really interesting because I'm really horrible at gardening. I'm also horrible at cooking. So
those are new things. I also find it hard, especially when I think about trying something new, the idea of being bad at it at first.
Oh, yeah.
Or to continue to be bad at it.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's always a deterrent too from doing those new things. That's cool. You're able to do that still and slow down and embrace that newness.
Yeah, that's my goal.
Very fun. Have you learned any new recipes recently?
No. So I've got two things that I'm going on right now. I had to finally learn how to cook like steak. I mean, I live in Texas now. I need to learn how to cook a steak.
Important.
So that is my journey right now and I have this grill that I don't know how to use. So that's my new thing. That's my 2025 thing is I will learn how to grill a steak.
I love that. I also want to learn how to grill steak. So maybe that will be a 2025 goal for me too.
We'll check in with each other to see if we can learn how to grill a steak.
December of this year, we'll make each other steaks.
We will do that.
That's awesome. Well, this was such a pleasure having you on, Christina. Where can everyone connect with you if they want to tap you for any leadership or business coaching or anything like that with Curveball? You can share to the audience.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn under Christina Kish. And my website is curveballventures.com, and you can check it out there. And I'd love to hear from people. If you do listen to this and you have any questions or you want to chat about something, just let me know.
And all of those will be in the description below.